and talk a little bit about some of the financials that are required. So what's it going to take? What kind of paperwork? Sometimes that scares the bejesus out of people, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the process. So we start point A to point Z, and we go through the whole thing in a very quick fashion. What does that entail? And then last but not least, we're going to wrap it up with some alternative financing options. So some things that are outside of the traditional banking walls that you might be interested in and might be able to work with. How's that sound? Much better than earlier, right? Okay. All right, here we go. So, eligibility requirements. So, just like dating, right? You want to be attracted to the bank, right? And a lot of times, more often than not, that's all about time in business. Now, banks want to see that time in business because they want to see those historical tax returns, right? They want to see how the business is doing, how it's making money, how you're being really efficient with your expenses. And more importantly, what does that bottom line look like for that business, okay? So, and a lot of times that can be your first tough hurdle as a newer business, right? So, but that is the hard truth right there. And I put on there, most banks want to see 1 to 3 years. Most banks want to see at least 2 years. 3 years is better. And you might say, well, David, what if I was less than 2 years? Could you still do a loan for me? It's possible. Yeah, it is. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward here. But typically, we want to see those tax returns just because we can see those historical numbers there. But there's something else besides having time in business. Quick show of hands. Who out there is familiar with the 5 C's of credit? 5 C's of credit. Hold them up high if you got them, if you know what they are. Anybody? I see one. Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, we'll go through it then. So besides having historical time in business, you're going to want to have some character, right? And that's what we're looking for in business. These aren't anything that's too crazy or too far out, but it's character. This is about paying your creditors on time. So if you've got, just like your personal bills, if you're paying your mortgage, you're paying your credit cards, you want to make sure you're paying those on time. When you pay those on time, those folks really love it because they get their payment, but also too, it's doing something else. It's improving your FICO score, right? So it's improving your credit score, and that's a good thing to do. Same thing with your business. You want to pay those business vendors and those folks that you owe on time because it does build a little character with them. The second C is capital, right? So this is all about saving up money for your down payment. So typically, when you go to apply for a commercial loan, the bank's going to finance probably the majority of that loan request for you, but they're going to ask that you put a little bit down. They're going to ask that you have a stake in the game, right? Maybe a little bit of cash. Could be some equity, but they're going to ask that you're part of that, okay? So when you get ready to apply for a loan, you want to make sure that you're thinking about that ahead of time. And whether that's saving a little bit here and there, keeping that money in the business, make sure that you got some capital because that's going to be one of the first questions out of a lender's mouth. Tell me more about what you have saved up so far. The third one here is probably one of the most important ones. That's our capacity to repay. And this is all about running an efficient business. So that means, in keeping it simple here, guys, this is about revenues. You're driving revenues each and every day in your business. So, or driving sales. You're increasing those sales. They're growing. When all your expenses are taken out, what's left over? That's considered your net income, right? And that net income is what's going to drive your capacity to repay. We're going to get into that a little bit more as we go forward here, but that's basically what that means, okay? All right, conditions. What does that one mean? Not borrowing more than you have to and not for intended business purposes. Anybody got an idea on that one? I like it when it's a little interactive, so I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions tonight. I promise, not a whole lot of math, but we might have some interactions with some questions, okay? So, conditions, what does that mean? Anybody got an idea? Okay, keep your personal business separate, all right. Let's say that when you come in to borrow money you have a pretty darn good idea of how much you want, exactly how much you want to buy, because you've already got a purchase agreement. You've already shopped around. You know exactly you're going to buy. I'm a delivery business, for example. I have to have a vehicle to get me to and from. So for me, I'm going to buy a 2023 F-150. I'm going to spend $33,500. Cross my fingers, right? So, but I know exactly how much I'm going to spend. Not that I need to buy a delivery truck and I'm going to spend $100,000. You see the difference? We know exactly how much we're going to spend, and that's really important. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Also, I would say, okay, and then we'll keep going here. And then our fifth and final one is collateral, right? So when you think about a commercial loan, I want you to think about from the bank's perspective, right? So we'll put the bank hat on for just a minute. When we go to underwrite and look at a loan, we're going to look at 3 repayment sources, right? So the bank gets paid back. The first one, as you might imagine, is going to be from business operations. So when your business makes money, right, that's what's going to pay back the loan. That's usually the first repayment source, if you will, okay? The second one is typically going to be the business owner, which is what I'm going to refer to as the guarantor. So you are the owner of your business. You're 100% owner of your business. The bank's going to say, hey, I think the business is making enough money to qualify, but you as the owner are going to guarantee that note. So that's our second resource of payment. Our third, and hopefully, we never have to go there, but if the business can't make the loan payment and the guarantor or the owner of the business can't make the loan payment, the collateral is going to be that third one that repays that loan, right? So we're going to look to liquidate that collateral, whatever that may be. So it's important to make sure that you kind of understand that a little bit. So when we think about collateral, what kind of collateral do you think the banks like? Anybody want to take a stab at it? There's 2 of them up there. Come on, guys. Physical assets, like what? Okay. Think more physical. Like if the business doesn't make the payment, the guarantor can't make the payment, this piece of collateral, the bank's going to have to take it, liquidate it. They're going to have to sell it quick. What do they like? They like equipment. Yes. Okay. What about, equipment like a Ford F-150? Would that be a good piece of equipment? Okay, sure. Why is it a good piece of equipment? Because everybody drives one. You can sell them real easy, right? We can liquidate it quickly. Okay, what else? Say again? Backhoe. Yeah, sure. Equipment that's pretty readily available that people really want to have. Those are good pieces of collateral to utilize. Real estate, right? We love dirt, right? We love buildings. Those are always good things, typically, right? Besides real estate, besides some equipment, cash is a good one. Sometimes folks will have hey, I got a CD in a bank, or I got a savings account. Lock that up. Let's earn some money on that, and let's use that as collateral. But things the bank can easily liquidate. That's what we're going to look for collateral. When it comes to collateral, I would also tell you this, guys. The banker or that lender is going to come out if we use, for example, that whatever piece of equipment that is, they're going to come out and take a look at it. I would tell you to make sure it's well maintained. Make sure it's taken care of. All the maintenance has been done on it. It's taken care of. Same thing with your real estate. You can walk into a building and tell real quick if a business owner is taking care of his shop, right? It may not be the cleanest floor you've ever seen, but things are in their places. Doors work, that type of thing. Windows aren't broken. You can tell when someone's taking good care of collateral, because the first thing the bank's going to do when we use that piece of collateral, we're going to go value it, right? We're going to see, hey, how much is this worth, this piece of equipment? How much is this piece of real estate compared to the square footage and all the other things within it? How much is it worth? That's what we're going to do. So when you think about being eligible for a commercial loan, it is having some historical tax returns, but it's also making sure you're following the 5 C's of credit. Okay. Maybe some new stuff for some, maybe not for others, right? Okay. We'll keep on keep on moving. How about a little humor, right? You like humor, right? Give you a second to read that. Okay, I didn't say it was great humor. It might be a little dry, okay? But always make sure someone in the relationship has good credit. That's why it's called significant other. Sign if I can't. So, don't want to know credit scores, just want a show of hands. If I asked you today, again, I don't want to know. If I asked you today, quote show of hands, do you know your credit score? Awesome. Great. Hopefully that credit score is where you need it to be. Right? I will tell you that there are if you don't know what your credit score is, there's so many things out there. I wrote down myfico.com. I wrote down freescoreonline.com, creditkarma.com. I know a lot of credit cards out there will give you your credit score. So if you don't know where your score is, or if you haven't checked it out in the last year, I'd recommend that you take a look at it, see where your score's at, because that's going to be one of the critical components here, right? So this is about making sure that your credit score is where it needs to be. I'll tell you, guys, life happens. Bad things happen to good people all the time that can negatively affect their credit without them even knowing about it. Okay? And what I mean by that, you get married, you get divorced, you have a baby or two, or three. Death in the family. Things happen that can affect credit. So definitely want to make sure you're paying attention to where yours is at. And if it's not where it needs to be, then I would highly encourage you, because there's nothing worse than going to get ready. You've got all your paperwork, you got your business plan, you got everything you were taught in Jumpstart. You're ready to go. You go to apply for your commercial loan, but you forgot to check your credit score. Nothing worse than that. So then you got to wait. Shameless plug for First Bank. I will say it a couple times. I apologize, but not really. One of the things that First Bank does really well is called Credit Builder. So if you've got scars or blemishes on your credit report and you want to improve those, you can come sit with someone at the bank. They do a secured savings loan. You're basically putting a couple $100 in an account. All it does is just pay that payment. If we did there's no fee for the loan. You could take from it. It promotes savings. I mean, it's just a really good thing. There's some financial literacy around it. But what it does, I've seen people use this particular vehicle to improve their credit score. And within 6 to 18 months, your credit score has grown leaps and bounds. Okay? So if it's not where it needs to be, please don't wait. Please do something about it. One of the questions in the back, what was your credit score need to be? I think it depends. I think if you were entering into a loan, and I'd say probably the bottom would be around a 660, somewhere around that ballpark if I were guessing. Again, this is not standard throughout all the banks. I would tell you something with a 7 or 750 is kind of where you want to be at. That pretty much says, hey, I'm taking really good care of my credit and I'm managing it well. Okay? So I hope that kind of answers your question back there. Okay? All right. So let's go into the meat and start getting into some of this. So typically what you're going to want to do, or what your banker's going to want to do, is they're going to want to do a financial analysis. They're going to say, bring some information in. Let's talk about it, right? So what are they talking about when they say, let's do a financial analysis, right? It's not really a secret. They're trying to figure out a couple of key things right off the bat. And obviously with commercial lending, I can tell you this is not like a personal loan where you go in, they pull your credit, you show them a W-2, and you walk out with a check later on. That is not a commercial loan. It's just not. There's a lot of complexities around it. But they're really looking to determine 3 basic things, okay? The first one, and probably the most significant one, is cash flow, right? Because cash is king, right? Cash flow is king in your business. This is about your ability to repay. So when you take on a commercial loan, the bank wants to know, can they make that payment, right? That's what we want to know. And put up here, how long is your operating cycle? Everybody know what I'm talking about when I say operating cycle? Okay, real quick and simple and easy. Think of a circle, right? The top of the circle. This is the time it takes you as a business owner to buy those goods, provide those services, sell those goods or services, and get paid for it. Does that make sense, everybody? That's our operating cycle. So I ask you, is it better to have a short operating cycle or a long operating cycle? Short. Exactly. You guys are paying attention. I love it. So short operating cycles means you get paid quicker, right? And you need to understand that. I think about that of like a barber shop. You walk into your local barber shop, you sit down, you get him or her to cut your hair, right? You get up from the chair, you pull out your wallet, you give them a piece of plastic, Venmo them or cash. It's done. It's over with, right? Short operating cycle, short turnaround. Longer, maybe like that of an engineering services, maybe, right? So there's a lot of pre-work that's being done. Maybe they're paying a portion of that bill, but the end of that, there's got to be some revisions that are being done. So it's a longer operating cycle. So it's longer for you to get your money back, right? So think about what your operating cycle looks like. Are you making more than you're spending? Are you making more than you're spending? I know that sounds super logical, right? But you, as a business owner, got into business because you have a passion for what you do, right? You love what you do. And sometimes, with that passion, some of those expenses can get out of whack a little bit, right? And you're spending more than you're making. It can happen. I've seen it. So be cautious. Make sure you or whoever the person that's in your corner, a spouse, a friend, an accountant, whoever that is, make sure you got a good understanding of what that spend is looking like. Okay? Ability to repay. Second thing is all about the borrowing need. So when we think about the borrowing need, I'm going to use my truck example here again. How much do you really need, and do you know? Yes, I know exactly how much I need. My business requires me to be remote 85% of the time. So I've got to be on the go. I need a vehicle that's dependable that I can haul stuff. So I, bank, need a 2023 F-150, and I'm hoping to pay $33,300. Here's an estimate that I got from Heritage. Here's an estimate I got from X, Y, and Z, and this is why I'm going with this company. By doing that, that shows you've done your homework and you're ready to do business. You know exactly how much it's going to cost, and you're not trying to say, again, I need $50,000 or I need $100,000. You know exactly how much you need. Is the request in line with reality? I put this on here because I wanted to bring an example. Several years ago, we had a business come and say, I need to get a line of credit, David. I've got invoices that are outstanding, and they're getting so far behind that I can't pay my bills. Because they're not paying me, I can't in turn pay my bills. It's causing a very big dilemma. My wife is upset. It's a bad deal. And that's reality, right? So I will tell you this first and foremost, this business was super financially strong, very low debt, a lot of liquidity. I mean, just an ideal business customer to have sitting across from the desk, right? So I said, how much do you need? He says, David, I need $500,000. No problem. We can do that. Fast forward to the process. We do a $500,000 line of credit, okay? Almost a year later, we check in on that line of credit, see how he's doing, right? He's used about $225,000 of that line of credit. So about half of that, okay? Now, during that same time period, he has a very expensive piece of equipment that's in his shop. Guess what happens to that piece of equipment? Breaks down, right? And as any business owner knows, that equipment breaks. What do? You fix it. Well, they fixed it and it broke. They fixed it and it broke. They fixed it and it broke. So now they're at the point now it's unfixable. I've got to buy a new piece of equipment, an expensive piece of equipment. So now, from a bank standpoint, I have a very strong business that has a $500,000 outstanding debt, and now I've got to buy this expensive piece of equipment at the same time. Do I have the capacity to do it? Maybe, maybe not. Or would it have been easier? I really only needed about $200,000 to get me caught up. If I had that $200,000 outstanding as opposed to the $500 and just purchase my piece of equipment. You see where I'm going here? So you really want to borrow only what you need, because it's not if, but when things change in the business, because there's going to be some times like that. So our last one here is financial risk to the bank. So when we sit down at the desk and we look and we say, okay, you're the business, you own it, you're 100% owner of that business, and you're wanting to partner with the bank. That's essentially what you're doing, right? So the bank's got a little say-so. They're going to want to know a lot about your business. They're going to want to know a little bit about, is the request funding the owner's lifestyle or actual business operations? And what I mean by that is the money. You've got a strong business. It's doing really, really well, right? Is that money that you're making being left in the business each year, or is it being taken out every year? Now, there's everything right about paying yourself and, taking care of yourself that way. But if the business is funding your personal, and one quick and easy way you'll know that is that typically one of the things you're going to find out here a little while ago when we talk about documentation is we're going to ask for a lot of things. But one of the things we're going to ask for is a personal financial statement from you, right? That personal financial statement is nothing more than a piece of paper. It has your assets on one side, has your liabilities on the other side, shows your owner's net worth outside of the business, okay? So when we look on there, we see that 2026, I don't know what RVs are, but they're expensive, right? See that brand new side-by-side. We see all the toys. We're in Wyoming. We love our toys. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But if the business is solely supporting that, that could be a risk that the bank may have some concern with, right? So you want to be cautious of that a little bit. Who else owns the business? So several business owners out there. One of the examples I was thinking of here is that, say we've got a business over here that we've got guy's owned it for 20 years. He's ready to get out. And there's a guy working in the shop that really has been there through thick and thin. He wants to buy that business, but he doesn't quite have the cash to do it. So he'll do what they call a seller carry note, right? So that business owner, for a nominal interest rate, for a nominal period of time, will basically finance that purchase of that building for him. He'll draw up a contract, and then within 1 to 5 years, he'll ask him to go to the bank to get qualified, because by that time we'll have enough cash saved up, right? Seller carry note, pretty common. We see it a lot. Silent partners are one. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes if there's too many silent partners, that can be a challenge, maybe a risk that a bank's not wanting to undertake. Another one that comes to mind I think about is, let's say that I'm a business owner and I go to this bank and I've got a business credit card there. That's where I got my corporate card. That's where I got my checking account. But I've got my business equipment loan over here at this bank. That's where I did that. Didn't open a checking account. Then I go over here to this bank over here, and that's where I've got my real estate loan at. Do you see the concern maybe? Right? So banks, we like to make sure that we're working together. If there's too many hands in the cookie jar, it's just too much. It could be too much risk for a bank to have, okay? So we want to be cognitive of that, but more importantly, if you take nothing away from this, it's cash flow. Cash flow is king. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here as we go, but the borrowing need and the overall risk to the bank. Is it worth getting involved with your business? And that's where your business plan comes from, right? You've got that business plan drawn up. You've got some information with your business. Be prepared to share that. Yes? Not necessarily a percentage or a rule or anything like that. It's just more so, like, for example, sometimes it'll be like, this is a great business idea. This is my idea, for example, but I don't have the capital to get it going. So I go to you and you and you and you, and you guys all pitch in. Well, typically when people pitch in, they want to have a say. and they may not know anything about making donuts, because that's my business, right? They may not know anything about it, but they've got the cash. So again, because when you're coming to the bank, you're essentially taking on another partner. Good question. Absolutely. Okay, any questions on that? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about borrowing capacity, right? So I promised you I wouldn't have too much math, and I mean that sincerely, okay? So when we talk about borrowing capacity, this is your ability to repay that loan. Most banks are going to refer to it as debt service coverage or debt service coverage ratio, and this is something that you can do before you even get to the bank. I'm always a big fan of kind of knowing what that person is going to tell you before they tell you. So go ahead and take a look at it. So we got net operating income. That's our cash flow. And again, just to keep it simple and easy tonight, guys, that's all your sales you're doing minus your expenses. What's left over? That's your net income. That's our cash flow, okay? That's what we're talking about. That's the first item. The second one is a debt service costs. So these are all costs associated with your business. And what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about like your electricity bill and various other things. I'm talking more about your term things like, I've got going back to my business, I've got my truck loan, okay, out there, and that's $300 a month. And then I've got a forklift lease. I've got that because that's coming out every month, okay? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about debts, okay? But you're basically just taking your operating income or that net income, dividing it by your debt service cost. That's what gives you your debt service coverage ratio. It's really that simple, guys. Nothing additional to that whatsoever. And the reason that you want that number to be as high as possible, because when banks see that, they smile, especially when that number's high, right? So that measures your ability to repay. That's what helps them know that you can repay the loan. The business is strong enough, right? So most banks out there, I can't speak for all, but they require a 1.25 as their floor. Anybody know why? 1.5 debt service coverage ratio. Say again? Depends on the business. You're on the right path. You're on the right path here. Yeah. So think about it. 3 slides ago, we talked about one of those pieces that was very important to business, because sometimes in Wyoming we have what they call seasonality, right? Sometimes we have to do 12 months of work in 8 months, because that's what our business does. That's where the seasonality is, right? So it's conditions here, guys. Anybody remember 2020? There was a condition that happened during that time. Anybody remember what it was? What was it? COVID. Oh my gosh. I will tell you guys, I've been in banking a very, very long time, and I can only imagine being in a business's shoes, because they had to figure out how to do business all over again, because they didn't have customers coming in regularly as they could. They couldn't go out. They could not do a lot of the things that they would normally do to generate revenues, right? And I mean, there was a lot of businesses that it almost knocked them off the face. Yeah.
So that 1.25, if you're 1-to-1, that means I am barely paying my bills, right? The 0.25 is what you get to take home and live on. So, and your business uses to continue doing business. So,
yep.
If you're just in 1-to-1, typically your business is not making enough money to stay in business, and that's right. Why banks will look at 1.25 to say you're making enough extra to keep the business going, and you can stay employed and keep all that going. So the higher the number, the better. To answer your question, if you get up over 2, you're
pretty solid.
For every dollar you spend to run your business, you make $2 back. That's
right.
What that means.
So
that's why they look at that.
So they're kind of, it's again, it's not if, but when maybe there's some challenges in the business. Maybe the vendor that you use, that you get such a sweet smoking deal is out of business, right? So it's no longer. Maybe that vendor went up on their prices and now it's no longer any good, right? So we got to think about this. So for every dollar of debt, $1.25 of income, that's kind of what you want. You want that cushion so that if something were to happen, we're going to have a little bit to fall back on. Yes, sir. So typically when you're applying for a loan, they're going to look for the most recent financials. So for example, right now, a lot of people have not filed their 2025 tax returns, right? But they have done a profit and loss and a balance sheet. So they have from January 1 to December 31st. And typically, while historical tax returns are much more reliable, if you will, because they went through the government, all that kind of good stuff, those most up-to-date financials are going to be one of the things that we look at, okay? I will tell you that you're going to need to come with what you have, and there's going to be some options. We're going to get into that. So hold that thought for just a little bit, if you will. And if I don't answer it, come back and ask me. But we're going to get into a couple of those things. But because we talked a little bit about if you're not in business for a certain amount of time, banks love those historical tax returns. We love to see a couple years. But if they're not there, there are some other options, and we're going to get into those. Okay, so hold tight on that. Everybody okay on debt service coverage ratio so far? Okay, in the back. Yep. Yep. So again, like I said, I'm going to get into that. So I'm going to ask you to hold for just a moment. We'll talk a little bit about that. But there are some options. There's some options for some pro forma or some projections. And we'll go into that here in just a little bit. I'll share that with you. At the end of the day, guys, your banker on the other side, it should be working for you, okay? If they're not, then I would tell you to walk out and go to another bank because it's so important. My job, I take it seriously. You know, my job is to qualify you traditionally. If I can't qualify you traditionally, then I'm going to see if there's another avenue or another route or another way we can get what you need done. It's just that simple. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Okay? But again, that newness or that not having that historical tax return, that time in business, it's a tough hurdle. But there are ways to get around it, and we do it every day. I'm thinking to myself, it's happened twice this week already. So it can happen. Okay? Let's move forward. So when we're talking about, I thought I'd give you a quick example of what debt service coverage would look like. So we got Burton Shoe Stores here, right? They're looking to remodel their storefront. They're trying to get a bid from a bank so they can go do that. Real simple and fast here. You've got net operating incomes of $150,000. You can see the debts they have listed. They got interest expense, principal payments, and some pension fund obligations that the business contributes to. If you total those expenses up, you get $115,000. 150 divided by 115, 1.30 debt service coverage ratio. It's real simple math, guys. That's why I say this is one, take a snapshot of it. We'll have copies of the deck available for you, but it's really as simple as that. And the higher that number, the better it's going to be. The more cash flow that's being generated. Maybe you've got okay cash flow, but you have really low debt, which is a good thing. Maybe your business is making money hand over fist, right? But your debt is pretty high. So it just depends, right? But that's how it works. Make sense? All right. You guys, you seem like numbers people, right? Who out there, quick show of hand, loves numbers, loves getting into the profit and loss and balance sheet and kind of working through it and seeing, oh, there's a problem right there. Let's go fix it. Okay, there's some of you out there maybe tonight. Yeah? Okay. For those that love numbers and those that don't, it's okay. Yep, what you got? Okay. Self-sabotage? Okay, fair enough. Numbers are one of those things I think you can either, it's kind of like developing a taste for a certain food, I think. For me, I never ate avocado until I was, I don't know, a year ago, I think, because I couldn't stand it. I'm like, why is something so disgusting and so the texture of it? It just made me almost want to, I just didn't like it. And then all of a sudden, a buddy introduced them to me, and they're in salads. Now they're everywhere. They're healthy. My wife's like, I can't believe you're doing this. And it's a good thing. So you may have to develop a taste for numbers, okay? And that's part of the deal. So what I did here on this next slide, guys, in my opinion, if you don't love numbers, there's probably 5 numbers you really need to know so that you can stay close to your business. Because many of you, rightfully so, are going to have that CPA, you're going to have that accountant, going to have that bookkeeper person in your corner doing the most of it, but you want to make sure that you got your hand on the pulse, right? So you know what's going on too. So numbers you need to know. First thing is accounts receivable. So some of you may be doing that. Some of you may not in your business, but I thought we definitely need to make sure we're covering it. So this is who owes you money, right? And talking about your collection process. I will tell you, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Typically, for the most part, if you're invoicing, 30 days is probably a good time frame and a good boundary to set for your business for them to pay you. Some of you may take on some additional large companies that you're doing some work for, and they're going to want to say, hey, would you mind if I pay you in 60 days? And you're looking at that big number, right? So you're saying, I'll do that. 60 days before they pay you, okay? Keep that in mind. 60 days is a long time, okay? And then if it goes beyond 60 days, statistics tell us if it goes out to 90 days, guys, the likeliness of you being paid is about 30%. If you're even paid for the services that you rendered or for that product that you did. Keep that in mind. So it's not fun by any means. So it's important to establish that relationship. But it's the collection process. I will tell you, no matter what type of business you are in, if you are invoicing folks, you better have a collection process. Maybe that's a person. You're like, hey, David, I don't have it, man. I don't have time to add employees. I can't afford it. My wife doesn't want to do it anymore. My husband said, no, they're not doing it. If you don't have a collection process in place in your business, I will tell you that's going to equal a short-term loan at a bank if you can get one. Because at that time, things are starting to go awry, right? Because that business that's you agreed to 60 days out there, or even the ones that agreed to 30 days, they're not paying you on time. They're not paying you, so you can't pay your bills from your business.
I think this is a good time to interject for those of you who are thinking about using something like Square, or taking debit cards, credit cards. A lot of business owners get a little squeamish about that because they have to pay a fee. I'll tell you a story about Taco Bell in Rock Springs. During the oil boom, decided they were tired of paying the fee. So they went to cash and check only. That lasted about 5 days before the signs came down and they went back to taking plastic because everybody quit going there. You have to understand your clientele and how they will pay for your goods and services in your business plan. If you're going to use some kind of merchant service to take debit or credit card, whether it's Apple or Apple Square or somebody else, build that fee into the cost of your product, right? That's just the cost of you doing business. Who should pay for that? Your customer, right? That should be part of your business plan. So don't be one of those people who looks at that and says, well, I have to eat that cost. No, you pass it on just like Walmart does for all the shoplifting that happens in there. They don't pay for that. You do. They just raise their prices to cover the cost of that, right? You as a business owner in your business plan, when you start thinking about, and I would go to Rob and I'd say, Rob, for my industry, what is the standard bad debt that gets written off? 5%? Well, I got to add that into my business plan, and I got to charge accordingly and cover for the people who don't pay me, right? Accounts receivable is the biggest place that business owners get jammed up in staying in business. Okay? Anybody know what a hotshot driver is? Okay. What is it?
Yep.
Yeah. So during the oil boom that we had back in the early 2000s, I can't tell you how many hotshot drivers I knew who they were making so much money that they're putting on their personal credit card or having a personal loan, and because they weren't getting paid timely, filed bankruptcy, and 90 days after their bankruptcy settled, here comes all these checks. Well, now I got to pay back all the bankruptcy fees and everything else, all because they weren't managing their accounts receivable appropriately. So, can't tell you enough. We will look at it as a bank, but you need to know that number and how you're going to manage how you get paid. That's why that's the very first number you need to know. Who owes you? How are you going to collect?
There is a line item on tax returns labeled bad debt. And typically what happens when those items you don't collect on, that's where it goes on your tax return. Okay? Yes, sir. I don't know that I can really answer that, because a lot of those were invoice type situations where they were paid 60 days, 90 days out. So by that time, a lot can happen if things aren't met. So not really. So saw a lot of businesses change names and come back in a new business name and same truck and new sticker, and there you go. So, but okay, so accounts receivable, guys, make sure whatever you do, some of you guys are going to present your plan here in a couple weeks. Make sure that it's in your business plan, okay? Have a collection process. All right, number 2, accounts payable. So this is you paying your bills, your business bills, okay? So I got a question for you. So it's February 4th. You go to the mailbox. Your business receives a bill. Do you pay it today? Yes or no? Simple question. What do you got? Yes? Maybe. Anybody else? It depends. Why? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because guys, when we think about cash flow is king, we talked about it, right? So as a business, you got bills to pay. So let's say hypothetically that we receive that bill today on February 4th, and maybe we hold on to that. We put that bill at the end of our desk. 2 weeks from now, we take another look at that bill, and then we pay it. It's paid in 30 days. It's going to be paid on time. Essentially, what you've done is extended your cash flow a little longer in the month. Or you're thinking, David, that's only 2 weeks. Maybe something comes up and during that time frame. What's that? There you go. You might have some deposits going to take care of you. But think about your cash flow. Cash flow is king. I can't say that enough, guys. The next one is taking advantage of buying on credit, vendor invoicing. So I'm thinking about the tire shop, right? You go to the tire shop, you look in the back, and there's like a zillion tires back there, right? You think they bought all those tires up front? No, right? They've got a vendor that says, hey, if you take my tires and put in your back of your shop, I'll let you have them for a short period of time, right? And then at some point down the road, you're going to have to start paying me interest or pay me for those tires. But if I can sell those tires in the next week or two, I've essentially bought on credit. Doesn't cost me a thing. And that's what you want to be thinking about in your business. Same thing, I put a credit card up here too. Some of our smaller businesses, I will tell you, that's how they got started, on a credit card. It's not a foolproof plan by any means, but I will tell you, if I'm a small enough business And for example, I make something and I sell a good, for example, okay? I go to and I charge it on my credit card on the first of the month. I buy those goods, what I need, I make that product, and 2 weeks from now, I go to the craft fair or I go wherever I sell my products at. And I do pretty good. I sell those products. The beginning of week 3, I pay my credit card back. What have I essentially done? I've essentially financed it and I paid 0% interest because as long as you pay within 30 days, you're not charged anything, okay? So it is possible, granted on a smaller scale, by all means. Line of credit. Cattle ranchers out there. Anybody? Cattle ranchers? Anybody? Okay, I feel like I'm in good company because I'm a city guy myself. Anyways, we do a lot of ag lending. That's true. We do a lot of ag lending in our world, right? But the cattle ranchers, they have a longer operating cycle than normal businesses, right? So what a cattle rancher could do, and that often do, they'll come to the bank and say, hey, I need to establish a line of credit, say for $100,000, okay? And I'm going to do that at the very beginning of the year. And then what I'm going to do is I need to grow my cows big and strong and plump and fat so that when we go to the end of the year, they'll be good to go. So what we're doing, so we got feed that's going to cost, so I'm going to borrow from the line. They got veterinarian bills they're going to borrow. Maybe I got to take the cows. That's going to cost me gas to trail them there. All the expenses that I'm incurring, I'm pulling from that line of credit. I'm not paying a thing till I go, usually in November or December, that's when they sell their cattle. And let's be honest, cattle prices are great right now. Have you checked out the beef prices? Anywhere you go, they're doing good. Don't let them fool you. But they're going to sell, and when they sell, they're going to come right back to the bank, pay off the principal that they borrowed on that $100,000 line of credit, plus the interest that accrued throughout. They didn't make one payment throughout. It's a little different on the ag side, but that's an option of how you can buy on credit. Make sense? Okay. All right, moving on here. Cost of goods sold, or COGS. So this is all about your expenses, guys, just making sure that you're tracking everything. More, your tax accountant or whenever you go to do your books, they'll love you for it. I'm not going to dwell too much on this one. Talked about not commingling funds. Keep your personal separate from your business. If I had to bet, I'm not a betting guy, but I think we've heard that in every class, right? Do not commingle. Do not commingle. Shameless plug here. I would tell you to open up a business checking account. That's your normal operating account. That's where your checks are coming out of. That's where your debits, your ACHs, maybe your merchant services is getting fed through there. That's your everyday run that you're using. I'm going to also suggest that you open up a secondary account, another free account, that you've got your tax money there. Because when it comes time to pay taxes, you don't want to be scrambling around of where that tax money, that payment's going to come from. We want to make sure that that's set aside and it's ready to go for you, okay? COGS. Next one here, you ask businesses how well they're doing. This is where they're going to go to. Man, revenues were great this year. Man, we're growing, hand over fist, right? You're just basically looking at, are my revenues as strong as they were last year? Are they as strong as they were last month, last quarter? Did it dip a little bit? Is there some consistency from year to year or from month to month, depending on how you're measuring it, right? And again, we want to make sure that we're covering all those costs, understanding what those are. I'm going to go back for just a minute. I missed something here on cost of goods. So everybody know what cost of goods is, right? It's about your labor, your workforce, right? It's what it takes to produce or whatever production efforts you have. Let's say I'm a furniture making business, right? It's about my labor. It's definitely about my materials, right? I need the wood, I need the leather and pleather and all those wonderful fabrics, right? But what about your utilities? Is that included in there too? It is, right? It's definitely included, because think about it. I've got to have a shop to make my furniture. Well, I need electricity to do that. I need lights to be able to see what's going on. So don't forget, labor, materials, manufacturing overhead. Definitely important. So I want to make sure I mention that. What's that? Tariffs? I'm not sure. I mean, it is a cost of doing business. I mean, so it's possible. This is where I'm going to say I defer, right? Defer to our accounting friends. So as far as the debit credit card cost on sales, yeah, Ben mentioned it earlier. I'm going to real quickly. If you go to any business and most people are going to pull out a piece of plastic to pay these days, I mean, cash is still good by all means, but a lot of businesses, think about it, they don't want to take in too much cash because if they go take it to their bank, they get charged for bringing it in. They get charged for taking it out, right? So people love plastic. So that means merchant services. Plus, you can take advantage of getting paid a lot quicker. So that's important to do. Let's just say I have a product and they have it on my shelf, right? And that product costs $15. But it's going to, for easy math here, let's say 3% is what my merchant services fee. So that's 45 cents, right? So 15, I'm going to round it up to 15.50. That's what that product should be costing. You're extending that cost of the merchant services to your customer because that is a true cost of doing business. Yeah. Say that a little louder, I'm sorry. Right, and right. I'm sure there's some out there, but make sure you're extending that cost. So whatever the cost of the merchant service program, usually is a percentage of a rate. So if it's 4%, 3%, that's what they're charging you to use their machine. What I'm saying, so you got that cost that's coming out on your monthly cycle, your monthly billing, right? So that fee is going to come out. Or is it being charged individually on the product that you sold? Could be. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying double dip by any means. Charge them on both sides. So, but there are some that don't do it that way. So you'll want to make sure that you're extending that. But that's a great question for sure. Okay. So we've got receivables, we got accounts payable, cost of goods, revenues, and finally inventory. Now this is a tricky one, right? Because you got to have items on your shelf, right? So that when folks come into your place of business, you can sell those items, right? But think about it. If we're lucky enough to be that tire shop where we've got those tires that we're kind of holding on to and not paying a price for them, that's one thing. But when you go to that tire shop, what else does a tire shop do? Man, they do oil changes. So they need oil. And they only just need one kind. They need like 14 different kinds of oils. They need oil filters. They need fan belts. They need all these other things so that business owner can cross-sell not only tires, but oil changes and other things, right? Well, it costs money to have those items sitting on your shelf, right? So it takes funds out of your business account to pay for those items, right? So the question becomes is if you've got, are you moving it fast enough or are you buying too much, right? Because we definitely don't want too much inventory on our shelves unless we know for a fact that we can move it fast, right? I worked for a business a while back and was looking at our books and I was like, man, I feel like our numbers should be better than it is right now, right? And there was a line I looked on there and it was office supplies. Something very trivial, right? You're like, sure. So I go and look at it and sure enough, the person that ordered office supplies religiously every week. Staples, all the wonderful things. And I went to our supply room and man, we had stacks and stacks of staples and binder clips. We couldn't use as many binder clips in the next 5 years that we had on those shelves. So, and I share that with you because a simple reason, guys, we were able to obviously cut that back. We didn't need that many supplies when it comes to binder clips and staplers and staples, but we cut that back and we were able to save money. And that is a big deal, and that's what you're going to be doing as business owners, looking for ways you can cut that down and shave those expenses a little bit, right? So when we think about our tire shop, like I said, it's having that right balance, and it's something that you may have to measure on a monthly basis, right? Who knows how much inventory you have? Maybe there's some seasonality during the months of summer months. I'm sure that probably you have to have a lot of inventory on hand during the summertime, right? But there's certain months where you just can't have that much. Just like a bank, when you come to the bank and they say, hey, I need to get a large amount of cash. What does the bank tell you? Anybody ever tried? I need a large amount of cash. I'm going to come to the bank. What are they going to tell you? They're going to say, come back next week. You know why? Because they don't keep it on hand. If they kept all that cash that you're needing in the vault, all it's doing is collecting dust. It's exactly what's happening. It's the same exact thing, guys. So keep in mind of how much inventory you have to have, and keep on in pace there. Okay, so short or long-winded way of saying these are the numbers I think you need to know, and if you do, you're going to feel a lot better about where your business is at and what's going on. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on here. So let's talk about when you come in to apply for a commercial loan. You're going to go and say, hey, I need to speak with a commercial lending officer or someone that's doing commercial loans. They'll get you back to the person. So commercial banking can be intimidating, guys, in my opinion, because it's complex. There's not just a one size fits all. Like I said, there's so many different vehicles, there's so many different things, regulations. So I think it's important to know what to expect and what it's going to look like. So I want you to be prepared. So when you come in to apply for a commercial loan, sit down, but be prepared. Be prepared to have a good conversation. That banker, maybe that's the first time they're meeting you. They want to know who you are, what your business is about, how much you're looking to borrow, how much cash you have saved. Some of these questions should be sounding familiar here, right? You know, what makes your business successful versus the competitor right down the street? What are you doing differently, right? What's your accounts receivable look like? What do your payables look like? Be prepared to talk about, you know, this is what I want to do, and this is the collateral I'm willing to offer. And if that doesn't work, I think I've got some backups here. Give them some options. You're trying to build a relationship with that banker, and that banker wants to figure out how they can help you. But it's about you giving them necessary information, and it shouldn't be about firing darts, you know, asking question after question after question after question, but be willing, be forthcoming to share that information, what your business does, what makes you special. Talk about the good things. I think everybody wants to, you know, this is what my business is. These are the good things that are happening in my business. But do you share the bad things that are happening in your business with your banker across the desk? What about the things that are in your business that are really not bad, but ugly? I mean, these are things that keep you up at night. You can't sleep. They're so bad. Do you talk to your banker about those things? I would tell you yes, because to me, vulnerability was someone that's saying, hey, this is where I'm at. I know I can do this. I've got a good product. I got a good service. I know I can make this grow. I just need to do X, Y, and Z. Man, I'm going to work twice as hard for him, because that's that reality, man, that's exactly what you want to hear. Because here's the thing. You're going to show them numbers anyways, right? The numbers tell the story, right? They already know what the story, but that's only half the story. They want to hear about what you're doing, what you're putting in place, what you're changing to help the business get better, all right? So I'm going to kind of hold there, but hopefully this gives you just a little bit more information, so it's not so intimidating when you walk in. You're prepared. You know, you've got your business plan in place. You know, come with financials. I will tell you, whether you're in business 3 months or you're in business 30 years, come with financials. If you have a tax return from the previous year and you have 2 months on that tax return, bring it. But I'd also ask you to bring your profit and loss and your balance sheet with you for the remainder of the term that you've been in business, okay? Let's see how the business is doing. How's it growing? Is it getting better? Is it flat? Is it getting worse? Is it because of the seasonality? Again, the numbers tell the story. So bring those financials with you, okay? All right. So let's talk about documentation real quick. We're moving on, guys. So let's see what we got here. Okay, we're doing good. So documentation to apply. You're going to hear the term full application be mentioned, okay? And that's when everything really starts. So you're going to fill out a loan application. Most banks out there have got a paper or electronic app. It says, this is my business. This is the owner. This is how much I'm going to borrow. And this is the kind of the term I'm looking for, okay? You're going to fill out the application. That gets the ball rolling. The next thing you're going to do is sign a beneficial ownership form. And what that is, in case you guys are not familiar with that, if you've opened up a business checking account lately, you probably know what that is. Or if you're applying for a loan, you're going to fill out a beneficial ownership form. And all it simply states is that you can act on behalf of the business. So, for example, if I'm a business owner and I'm 50-50 with my wife, we're both going to have to sign typically on a loan, because anybody over 25% mostly are going to have to sign as a guarantor behind that loan request. Okay? So beneficial ownership request. We're looking for business tax returns. I put up there for the last 3 years. 2 years is sufficient as well. If we've got less than that, we'll go into that here in just a little bit. We're going to look for year-to-date business interims. So say, for example, we're in October and you have last year's tax return. Bring January 1 through August 31st. Bring that company prepared information that shows what you've been doing during those 8 months. Very important. Bankers want to see them. They're also going to ask for your personal tax returns for the past 3 years. How come for that? We're applying for a business loan. Why are we doing that? Remember those repayment sources we talked about? First is the business, second is the owner of the business, which will be a guarantor on that business loan. So we want to see what your personal looks like, right? So we're going to look at your tax returns. We're going to ask for that personal financial statement from you. It shows your assets and your liabilities, and we'll see what that looks like. And any additional material information. So for example, if we're buying a truck, that's what we're here today to do. I'm bringing in some estimates for that truck. So I know exactly how much we're going to be spending typically. We know what to do with that. Trying to think here. So that's the documentation that you need to apply for a loan. And the cool thing about it, and I'm just going to throw this out there, there's some banks out there you go and they say, hey, our commercial lender is in another state. First Bank, I'm shameless plug again, whether you're applying for a $7,000 loan or if you're applying for a couple $1 million, you're going to do the same process. You're going to have the same documentation, and you're probably going to do it at the same desk. It's really that simple, okay? So, documentation. All right, let's talk about some processing times here as we are moving forward here, guys. So, now that we've got all that documentation, we've got a full application. You'll hear sometimes lenders talk about, I'm on the clock. So, by law, I have to give you a credit decision within 30 days. Have to. Unless you're a larger business, if you've got revenues from the previous year over $1 million, you're going to get 60 days. But typically, for the most part, from some of your loans less than $1 million, it's going to go to 30 days, all right? So it's extremely important. Try not to piecemeal that information when you go to apply for that commercial loan. For me personally, if someone says, hey, David, I've got my application right here signed. Here's my financials. Here's my personal financial statement. Here you go. Here's what I want to buy. Here's the written estimate. Here you go. And they slide it across the desk. Makes me smile, makes my heart go pitter-patter because I know I can actively get on top of that loan right now. What happens sometimes is that someone will say, yeah, I'm ready to do this loan. They'll come in, they'll fill out the application. They'll give me a tax return, but maybe not some of the other ones. And then they'll say, hey, I got to go get back to work, which happens sometimes, right? But then what happens is we're missing some of those items, so it can delay the process of having a full application. So keep that in mind. The sooner you get that to your lender, the quicker they can work on it. So let's just say you're applying for a loan that has no collateral whatsoever. Typical turnaround time on something like that was in a couple days. I know you just said, David, that, hey, typically we have collateral on a loan, and that is true. We do have some borrowers out there that have maybe a strong net worth, a lot of assets out there. They have a lot of liquidity. They will personally sign and maybe not need collateral. So that is what I'm talking about there. So titled vehicles or titled collateral. So if you're buying that truck we talked about from the dealership down the street, they're going to have that title handy. So there's no problems there whatsoever. We can get that approved and done a couple days. Simple and easy, right? When we don't have that title on hand, it can add a couple of days. I did a loan for a borrower here not too long ago, and he says, hey, man, I need to buy a skidster, no problem. I said, let's go. Let's grab your financials. We grab all the financials, and I said, I just need that title, and we're good to go. He's buying it from his buddy down the street. Well, he goes to get the title from his buddy down the street, and guess what? There's no title. So we got to apply for a duplicate title. Not a big deal, but it takes a couple more days, takes more time. So just keep that in mind, that if you're looking to buy, know that you're going to have something, you're going to need to have your hands on that title. When it comes to real property, we're talking about dirt here, land, right? We do those all day, every day. Commercial real estate, we love financing real estate, absolutely. Fully dependent as far as time-wise on an appraisal. Typically, most of your banks are going to want to do an appraisal. Average appraisal takes about anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the time of the year. It's about 4 times as expensive as a personal appraisal. So get ready for that, depending on the complexity of the building. But it's really going to take, I'd say probably 30 to 45 days is probably a good time frame if you're buying some commercial real estate. Okay? SBA. You've got my little, I don't know what you call that guy. It's just awkward dude. I don't know what you call it. But anyways, SBA, it depends on the time frame. I've done loans as quick as a couple of, 45 days on SBA loan. I've had them drag out past a year. It just depends. And what depends on is that it's really, there's a lot of things. There's so many variables in an SBA loan. But I will tell you, it's such a critical component to financing today. So first of all, SBA, First Bank is an SBA preferred lender, which means basically you'll sit across the desk. We'll figure out, should we do traditional financing or should we do SBA financing? If we decide SBA is the best route to go, I'm going to underwrite the loan with SBA guidelines, and they're just going to basically say, okay, and stamp it. It gets done. You'd never know the difference other than it says SBA documentation on top of the paperwork. Seriously. So, and just to kind of keep it simple here, guys, the differences between traditional financing versus SBA. Now, when we think about traditional finance of a commercial real estate, for example, the bank's going to finance a large portion of that building for us, okay? And then they're going to ask you as the borrowing entity to put down money, put your stake in that loan. It could be about 20, 25%, somewhere that. So let's just say 25%, and then 75% is what the bank's financing. Sometimes people have that cash, sometimes they don't. Just depends, okay? So on a SBA loan, you could get away with financing up to 90% and only have to put down 10% cash. It's a pretty big difference when you're talking about $1 million loan, right? A lot of money, okay? Plus, traditionally, bank fees that are coming with an SBA or with a traditional loan, they're going to be a little less than your SBA fees are because they're financing for different reasons, and they're financing at a higher loan to value. I can tell you that your commercial loan is going to finance for about 25 years. Your SBA, you can finance it up to 30 years. They're going to have some really low rates. They're going to probably be a little lower than your bank rates, okay? So there's some give and take with that. And I think most people have the perception in their mind that SBA, well, David, that's only for new business owners, right? No. I tell you, the last 3 or 4 SBA loans we've done here recently, they've all been to business owners that have been in business for 10 years plus. And the reason for that partially is because they can put down that less cash, preserve the cash they already have in their business, and they can pay cash for some of the things they need to. Make sense? Okay? So it's not necessarily used for new businesses. Oh, and one other thing too. I mentioned this because you were asking me about it earlier. So what if I haven't been in business that long, You can use projections with an SBA loan, whereas traditionally on a traditional loan, we wouldn't be using those. We'd be using historical financials, right? So let me give you my example here. So there's a business in town that came and said, hey, David, I need to buy this commercial building right over there. Okay, wonderful. But I've only been in business 18 months, right? And I say, oh, okay, let's sit down and let's look at it together, right? Because remember what I told you, we want a couple years of tax returns, right? That's typically what most banks want to see. Some banks won't even talk to you. Just, it is what it is. But I would tell you that with this particular customer, we sat down, we had a tax return for the previous year. So we had 1 year of tax returns, okay? About 6 months worth of production there. And then we had the next 12 months, they were company prepared profit and loss statement, balance sheet. On top of that, the customer said, I'm so confident in my product and I'm so confident that I can beat my competition and my prices are so well and I'm doing something way better than my competition is doing. I'm going to give you 2 years beyond the financials I just gave you. I'm going to give you a month-by-month breakdown of my income I'm expected to take in, my expenses, showing what my net income, and showing at the bottom that I can take the loan payment that I'm requesting to pay for that building, and I can still cash flow. I will tell you with those projections, we did an SBA loan for that customer, and we did that loan. They were in business 18 months. So it is possible. It is doable. There are other, when I say vehicles or other financial avenues that you can travel out there. SBA is a critical component. I'll tell you, there's just some times where the numbers just don't work traditionally, and we just have to go SBA. It just, so they're a vital part of our program. But as far as a timeline, I wouldn't dream of telling you how long it's going to take. Okay? Questions on those, guys? Timelines. Okay, moving forward here. So now I'm going to ask Ben to come up here. He's going to tell you a little bit about some alternative financing. So this is outside of the bank walls. We're going to have some documentation up here for some of those that you can take if you want to grab some of those on your way out, along with some other stuff. But he'll tell you about some alternative financing. Ben. All right. Turn that on. No, turn it on. Yep. Turn that on.
All right. Is that working now? Right there. Okay. I'll wear both so that the people that are listening can do it. We'll make this quick. A lot of you are looking at that and saying, well, I'm new. I don't have 2 years tax returns. What do I do in that case? David talked about a couple of the options you have. The unfortunate reality is a lot of that is going to be your own money going into the project. If you can get a good credit card that will allow you to extend out when you have to pay bills so that you can collect, that's a good route to go. And a lot of small business owners start out with that. As long as you pay within the billing cycle, usually within the month that you make the expense, you pay 0% on that. Okay, so it's almost like free money that extends that out. If you have questions about how that works, sit down with the banker, look at what that credit card will look like, how much you can qualify for, and you might go that route. Because if you're just starting out, that might be the best way to go. Okay. What if you need more than that and you need something more long-term because you're buying a piece of equipment or a building, something that you really, really need to make your business go? There are some alternatives. The first one I want to talk about is Lincoln Uinta Revolving Loan Fund. That is for Lincoln County and Uinta County residents only. It can go up to $150,000. There's a 10-year term. And it can be used for land or building acquisition, construction or renovation. So if you have a building that needs to be updated, you can use it for that. You can use it to purchase machinery or equipment. You can use it for working capital. So that's things like, I need enough money to be able to pay my people and keep that going until I have enough business going that I can have my business run until I start collecting things. Rocco, you had a question. So
I can tell you that they're going to be very, I would say, close to bank seeing out there. It might be just a tad
Yeah.
higher, but
They're
gonna be similar to what you're going to see.
they're going to be about 0.5% to 1% higher, typically, on that. So if bank loans are at 6.5, you might be paying 7.5. Okay. Their goal is to save or create one job for every $30,000 that they lend out. So you have to keep that in mind. Your job counts as one of those. That's $30,000. If you want to go above that, you need to be creating additional jobs or retaining jobs for them to approve that. They typically have a couple of bankers that sit on their board, a couple of business owners that sit on their board. I think they have a CPA over in Kemmer that sits on their board. And typically what they do is when they get those applications, very much like a bank, they will go ahead and they will look through that, but they're much more lenient towards projections and here's how I'm doing and I'm creating a job. So that's a good alternative for all of you because your business happens to be within Uintah County, or you probably wouldn't be here at Jumpstart. So that's a good option. There's the website to get to that, and that'll give you more details on that one. The next one, let me see if, I need to go up. Yeah, okay, that's it. So this one's a little tough. SBA Community Advantage Loan Program is a small business startup loan program. Now, here's the bad news. In the last 90 days plus, we've had a couple of shutdowns, and this program probably is not going to get renewed. What it was, though, was it's for a for-profit business with an eligible industry, must have exhausted other traditional financing. So whatever they replace it with will probably have this. What that means is you have to have a denial letter from a bank before you can qualify for this program. And typically, if you have a bank that works with the SBA, they will know that. They will refer you to them and say, here's the letter that you need to take to them. We've already reached out to them, told them how awesome your project is, and we'll make an introduction and they'll make it really easy for you. Wyoming Capital Access happens to be a SBA Community Advantage lender out of Casper. You can get these for up to $250,000. They're up to 10 years for working capital, 25 years for real estate. They might require collateral depending on how much you're asking for. And you can go there and check. I'll have to double check and see if we need to update this slide because the last time I talked to them, they said that's maybe a no-go on these anymore. But they will have other programs that you might be able to apply for. The interest rate question, these are typically higher, okay, because you're a startup. So instead of being at 7.5, you can expect somewhere around 9 to 10%. On those. Okay. That's one that you would look at. There's another group. I don't think I put them up here. Yeah, go ahead. You got a question. Okay. So they're a little bit cheaper. Okay. That's even better. You can never tell with SBA. Sometimes they go a little higher depending on the program, but if it's 5.91 for the Community Advantage, you just have to have that denial letter, right? The other one is Mountain West. That's another SBA Community Advantage lender that works in Wyoming. They're based out of Utah, and it would be the same kind of thing. Your bank, wherever you go to, who would say, hey, we can't do it, they would refer you to one of these two places that works in Wyoming. Okay. Let me look at the next one here. MoFi. MoFi is an interesting thing. This is a company that gets some government assistance, but mostly this is funded by banks who know we can't bank you, but we need you to have an ability to get loans when you're starting up. So a bunch of banks got together and they donated significant funds to this company so that they would have money to lend out. First Bank of Wyoming was the bank that got them to come to Wyoming, because the MO stands for Montana Financial. Okay. They came to Wyoming because there was a significant influx of cash so that they could operate in Wyoming. And there's advantages to banks and tax write-offs and other stuff. That's why they do it. But Lone Star is, did I just shut off? Did I? They can be. I just talk loud. Is that
No.
Is that working?
Yeah.
This one's working now. Okay. So
Handsome.
yeah, you don't have to lie to have friends, Rocco. All right. So sometimes they do tax credit loans. Okay, and that's usually for much larger loans, but for their startup loans, this is just funds that they generate. So just like your business, they dump more money back in so they can do more loans, pay their people, do the rest of that, and they've built up a large base of money that they can lend out for startups. Okay, rates are higher by design. So for these, you're looking at about 12%, and here's why. They want to make you bankable within 2 years and are motivated to push you back to the bank to refinance their loan at a lower rate at the bank. So they're strictly designed for startups. They're taking more risk because you're new, but they are willing to do that and get you off the books after 2 years and make you bankable. That's what their business model is. That's one of the other reasons that banks are donating money to them, because like these are future business owners that get off the ground, they've made it past 2 years, they're likely to succeed. We get those customers back, and they keep a record of which bank referred them if a bank did refer them, or you can go directly to them. Here's one. They need a business plan. They can help you with one, but they recommend that you come with one. Particularly, they say those that come from the Small Business Development Center. So Rob, when he came and said, we can help you with those are perfect for places like MoFi. And I think they're the only one that operates in Wyoming, although I heard a rumor that there might be another company coming in. So there would be a couple of options that way, but they're a good company to work with. You can check out their website. They'll show different things. They do loans in Wyoming. They do them every year. So that's another option. If you're looking at, I need more money than, my credit card can handle, or I need to purchase something, they're a very good option for you to do that. They will take projections and a business plan. Last but not least, Wyoming Smart Capital Network is kind of a hybrid between the SBA loans and the MoFi. So they're kind of like the Lincoln You Win a revolving fund. They typically get monies from the state through grants that come from the federal government, and then they will lend out, again, typically around the 8% range. But their loans are for working capital, equipment, construction, and real estate. The maximum they will go is $1 million. The maximum term is 10 years, and you have to have fewer than 750 employees. You have to be located in an eligible county in Wyoming. And last year, well, I guess 2 years ago, we finally made the list in 2024, right at the very end of the year. So 2025, was the first year that residents of Uintah County could participate in this group. So that's why they got added to the list. They will do something a little bit different. So you know how David was talking about you have to come in with money down for your loan. They will actually purchase up to 25% of the loan, acting as a down payment to the bank. They will be your guarantor. So if you come to David and you say, hey, David, I need a $100,000 loan, these guys will lend you or purchase out of that $100,000 up to 25% or $25,000. And they will say, we will hold on to that. We guarantee that. So the bank meets their guidelines of we got a down payment, even if it's financed somewhere else, and they will guarantee that if there's a loss, the bank still gets paid. Okay, so the banks like that program. You guys get to get into that program because they will actually finance that down payment for you. So that's another alternative there that you can use. They do take a subordinate position to allow the leading bank to take priority in case of a default. So if you buy a building and the bank takes possession of the building and sells it, these guys get paid after the bank does. Okay, so banks like working with them. They're a good program there. You may still need to come up with some money down to help you get there, but it's a nice alternative to help you get pushed on through all of that. That's all I have for alternative financing, but there are options out there. If you didn't get all those answered and you want to go to the website, you're not getting those, come in and talk to a banker, whether it's us or somebody else in town, and say, hey, I was at Jumpstart. What do you know about these guys? They can call people up. Typically, the groups who are on this list come around and visit banks every year so that we know what they look like, and we have a person that we can call so that when you have questions, we can call somebody directly and get your questions answered. Okay, so you don't have to know all of that. You can use your local bank. Even if they're not able to approve you, they will work very hard to try and find a place so that you can get approved, because while banks have rules and guidelines and policies they have to follow for approval, they are very interested in helping you get up and off the ground and going, because you are a future customer for them. So that's why we wanted to make sure before you walked out of here, you knew that, oh gosh, I'm not in business for 2 years. I don't have a ton of money down. I'm not able to do all of the things that the bank's going to require. There are other options to help you become bankable and get that business going so that you can be successful. So with that, any questions for David or I?
Yes.
Yeah, there's some materials up here at the front. You can come up and grab them and see what's available and ask any questions. We'll be happy to answer those for you.
We'll hang around for a little bit, guys.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. I got you. No, you're fine.
Batteries don't go as far as they used to.
You're fine. I turned that on.
Okay, thanks for coming, guys. Next week, oh my gosh, next week we're talking about marketing, but I think a little bit more. Jeremy back there's teaching the class next Wednesday is something exciting, and
Bring somebody with you. If you know, like somebody in the business world, sales, your significant other, spouse, next week is definitely the week to bring them. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna move it around, and it's gonna be quite the experience. We're gonna pack the room, high energy.
thanks, guys. We'll see you next Wednesday.
But it's a certain size. It's not moving from small to medium size.
Good job, man. Hey, appreciate you. You're the man. Always come through. I know. It's like it's so times of our stuff. Yeah. Well, that's the difficult part, right? No, we're good. Covered. I hope so. Covered the right topics. I hope so. Yeah. Cool. Good job, man. Appreciate you. Dead battery.
was gonna say, here's a battery.
Yeah, I don't trust these.
That's part of that or not?
Half the time,
Yeah.
the batteries in here are supposed to be charged and the backups, and they're not. So I just ignore them.
I'm gonna put those right there if I can. Yeah, no,